Hello everyone, welcome to Bella Vista Western Sydney, the developer group. Thanks for registering and join the session. Here we have Andrea with us who's sharing the flow series. This is like an entire month series. It's a 4-week session. It's happening on each week and Wednesday with the same time. So try to join and learn about the Salesforce flow and explore it. So each week, as I mentioned, it's the same Wednesday, 5 o'clock. Little bit about myself. I am Shaktivel Madesh. I am a community group leader for the Bella Vista. I'm working as a senior Salesforce developer at TechPost Services. You can reach me in the social channels. I'm available actively. And coming to the sponsors, yes, Trailblazer Community Groups, it's a sponsor for entire event. And Validity Inc., who's giving the swag for all the participants. So only thing, fill your contact information in this link. So they will distribute the Validity swag. It's about the agenda. Yes, this is the week 1 for the flow series. Here, Andrew sharing with us about the flow basis. And the Salesforce certification voucher, we are planning to provide the random participants each week 1. So please fill the same form in the end of the session, like end of the weeks, the 4th week, we will sharing the certification voucher and then followed by the validity team also sharing the swag. It's over to Andrew. Please introduce about yourself and go ahead.
Thanks, Shaktivel. Do you mind posting the link for the form in the chat so people can go ahead and fill that out when they get some time? Good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for joining. My name's Andrew Fragias. Delighted to be here talking with all of you guys, and thank you, Shaktivel, for having me for the next 4 weeks. So we're going to start off this week with something I would say sort of basic, and we're going to build up every week. So I'll start off with a little introduction to myself, then we'll go through what the content's going to be over the next 4 weeks, and then we'll get straight into it for today. So a bit about myself. I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for about 4.5 years now. I started as a consultant in the world, and now I'm working as a customer success manager at Validity. So my involvement, I'm also a answer community leader within Salesforce, and also been at several of these community events in the past. In terms of what we're going to be covering over the next 4 weeks. So this week, we're going to do a bit of a talking point at the beginning of when to use a workflow rule versus a flow versus a process builder. I'll also give you some insights about my personal preference, why I would choose that and where I would choose them. Then we'll go on to 2 flows that I've built out. We'll talk through every single aspect of it for the purpose of the recording as well, so everyone can see how to configure it at home when you guys get a chance as well. Week 2, we'll start off with a Spring 21 overview. We'll go through the release notes for Spring 21. We'll see what's new, what's coming up. And then we'll go for opportunity management-based flows. We've got some exciting ones there as well that get a bit more complex. We're dealing, one I can give a hint on is around renewal opportunities and how to make that a lot easier for your team. Week 3, we're going to go all into account management, making account management easier with flows. Right? How can flows improve account management? Especially, we'll talk about account teams and how that can be used, and also referencing metadata within your flow. So that'll be something you'll see in week 3. And finally, week 4 is going to be a summary of all the weeks we've done so far. And it's also going to gauge upon educational points from different experts within the area of why productivity for your users is important and what you can do using flows and other tools to boost that productivity and adoption. Now, guys, just some basic etiquette. If you guys have any questions throughout the time, please chuck them in the chat. Shaktivel, if the questions come up, feel free to jump in, let me know what the questions are, and I'll get through it. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get started with the first aspect. So give me 1 second. And Shaktivel, tell me when you can see my screen.
Yeah, still no.
Can you see my
yes.
screen here?
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. All right, so we're going to go through this. So the first part is, what's the difference between a flow, workflow rule, or process builder? And then we're going to go through some basic flows. Now, this one is asked a lot. You know, what are the differences between the three? You can see over the years, the technology has evolved, the usage, and also the use cases have evolved from that. What started with workflow rules, what built into process builder, and what is flow today. Looking at it in particular, I could say for a fact that I personally have never had to use workflow rules for a customer before, right? Or even in a spare time, I've gauged into it, but haven't been fully using workflow rules. And we'll gauge into that a bit more, why you'll do that. So what are some of the capabilities? Workflow rules, you can create a task, email it, you can use field updates, and send outbound messages. When it comes to process builder, however, you've got a bit more expanded capabilities here. Create a record, email alerts, trigger flows. You can even call Apex, post to chatter, invoke processes, so other processes within that. Quick actions, send notifications, submit for approvals, and that one's crucial as well. There's a lot complex approval processes that I've seen developed out in Process Builder rather than the standard approval processes. Update records and integrate with Quip. Flow, on the other hand, replaces the need for custom code. And this is all about clicks, not code, right? Salesforce is really pushing that message along, clicks, not code. It makes it a whole lot easier for an admin like myself and many of you guys, and even developers. Instead of spending hours and hours of time developing coding, which is a gift in itself, I can say I've never been a developer myself, but I pride all the people that are developers. But it's something that is going to make life a lot easier when it comes to those. It's a guided visual experience. You can have more complex processes with the same features as Process Builder, manipulate data, and trigger behind the scenes processes. Now, one thing I can note with flows is I recently read an article on LinkedIn where there was a comparison in processing power between Process Builder and flows. In terms of single transactions, flows had quite faster transaction speeds, and especially you saw a lot more benefit when it came to those bulk transactions. Flow had that faster time when processing it. So far, hopefully this is clear. If you guys haven't come across workflow rules, process builder, or flows before, I really strongly recommend going through Trailhead. There is abundance of resources there for workflow rules, process builder, and flows, and also it's pretty cool to play around with these things, right? I remember sometimes I just catch myself, my mind wandering and just going and building all sorts of different ones. So what would you choose and why? And this is the most important question here, right? Workflow rules are essentially a thing of the past, right? They have, as you saw, quite limited capabilities, right, compared to the other automation tools, I would say, that are available. So then you'd start to think, right, workflow rules has been ruled out. What's going to trigger the process, right? What's going to trigger the flow? When you're building these out, this is important so you can determine if you're going to choose a process builder or if you're going to choose a flow. If it's going to be a user interaction, you're going to go with a screen type flow, right? If it's going to be a record change, depending on the complexity of the record change and what follows, you've got either flow or process builder to choose from. If it's going to be invoked by process builder, you can do this by both flow and process builder. So in this scenario, it'll go back to if you're getting invoked by another by process builder, it would depend on what you're getting invoked by, what you need to do in the end of the use case, right? On record delete, this is something that's pretty new and it's for flow. And this is something, if you came to the last session I talked at here at the community group, I think it was about 2 sessions ago, I demonstrated how powerful the on record delete flow can be. If you're using user accesses Lightning, Community, or Visual Force pages, you would go for a flow. All right. And finally, if you want to call it by Apex, it would be a flow. So this is a quick little how-to guide of which ones you should choose and why. Now, obviously, when the logic gets a lot more complex, we're talking multiple decisions, and you're referencing a whole lot more data, you would tend to lean towards flow. Basic logic with an action, that's process builder, right? So let's say, for example, basic logic would be an opportunity is now being closed won, and I want to then assign a new rep to the account. You can do that with process builder, right? It's much simpler. It's very easy. Now, bit of my personal take on this. Up until about, I would say, 6 months ago, I was very heavy on process builder. I started broadening my horizons, doing more investigation, learning along the way as well. And also the features in Flow developed along the way. And I found myself more heavily now relying on Flow, especially looking in the answer community. A lot more people are using Flow now because it can cover a lot more aspects. It's a lot flexible, and it can do very complex things very easily. So far, Sakti, is there any questions from everyone? I haven't seen any come up. Can you see any?
No, Andrea, you can continue. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So that's essentially my little breakdown of workflow rules versus process builder versus a flow. We're going to take this time now, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and share a different screen so we can go ahead and get straight into a flow. Now, give me 1 second. Can you see my screen in about 2 seconds now? Sakti, can you see it?
Yes, I can. But before that, Anne is asking one questions about how would be the performance of flow versus code versus process builder?
Flow versus code versus process builder, did you say?
Yes.
It all depends what you're using it for, right? There are still some things that I see in the general community, talking to others around the community, that they would tend to sway towards, I would say, the extremely complex end of things, where they're still calling Apex actions, even a combination of flows and Apex they would be using. In terms of the actual stats and the numbers of performance, I don't know the actual stats and numbers of the performances between them, but I know from a process builder and flow perspective, flow is much faster, and especially around the bulk actions. Cool.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. So we're looking at this very simple flow here, right? So what I've gone and done is, just so you guys know why my screen may look a little bit different, I'm using the new auto layout beta feature. I tend to use that with all my flows moving forward. I've done a record triggered flow here. So my trigger is going to be a record triggered flow. So in terms of this, my trigger is when a record is created or updated. Now, what we want to try and achieve in this particular one is we're going to reparent any child opportunities that relate to a child account. So if you're familiar with the account hierarchy concept in Salesforce, where an account can have a parent account, we also want to populate a lookup on that opportunity that I created, that's a custom lookup, and so that it can appear on the parent level. So when you're on the parent account, you'll have a full visibility of any and all open, closed opportunities that are related to all the child accounts in that one view. So you're going to do this on record is created on or updated. Now, I've chosen to run the flow before the record is saved. The reason being is because I'm only using information from the opportunity already, and I'm able to grab the account, the parent account ID via lookup. It's very easy for me to do. I'm not going to related records or anything like that. So the before record is saved flow is much easier and gets a lot more performance out of it in terms of the triggers overall. Obviously, I've chosen for my object, this is the opportunity object. And where the condition, the parent account field that I have created, the custom field on my opportunity, is equal to a global reference empty string null. So what this is saying is essentially Flow gives you the ability to essentially say that is equal to empty. You can't just leave this value box empty, otherwise you have an error. So when you go into here, in particular, I'll click in here, and you've got a global constant value that you can reference here. So global constant, empty string. So that is the equivalent of just that field being empty as well. When do we want to run the flow for updated records? We want to run it every time a record is updated and meets these condition requirements. The reason we do this rather than only once is because maybe a user accidentally nulls out the parent account field. Maybe there's an automation or an integration that overwrites that parent account field in the future. We want to then be able to bring this back in line with the process we have. So making sure it is in line with what we want.
Andrew, sorry to disturb. Can you please zoom your browser window? Little bit?
Yeah, sure. Is that much better, guys?
Yes. Yeah.
Sure. Cool. No worries. All right. So can everyone see that perfectly now? If you can't, please feel free to drop a note in the chat. Sactiville will let me know. I'll zoom in even more. So like I was saying, you want to do it every time in case it gets overridden. If someone else, if a process, an integration, whatever the case is, overwrites it. You want to have this holistic view. So that's done. The first thing here is we're going to put a decision. The decision is going to determine whether or not the account is a child record. So is this account a child of an existing account? Again, it's that standard field in Salesforce on the account level called parent account. We're checking to see if that's populated. Now, if we look here, the way we do this is we're going to reference the data that's on the record that triggered this flow. So we go down here to where it says record, opportunity. Now we want to grab information from the account that's related to the opportunity. So we're going to click account ID and we'll go across again to all the fields related to the account. And we're going to look for the field called parent account. So we're going to use this field here rather than going for the other lookup again. And that gives us our field. And we're going to put does not equal using that same one again, global constant, empty string. So we don't want this account to have an empty parent account value, which in fact indicates that it's not a child record. It could be a parent actually. When to execute this, we want it to execute if the condition requirements are met. You place a label on this, and also there is a default path. So I've put a label here, does not have a parent account. Fairly simple and straightforward in terms of this. So what you do next is you're going to determine what happens on each of those paths. So when it doesn't have a parent account or isn't a child, we'll just simply end the flow altogether. So in terms of that, we don't want to do anything else with it because this flow is purely built for a very simple process. When it does have a parent account, however, we're going to use an assignment element. So this assignment element, you'll notice in different flows, so after save flows, assignment elements are used for other aspects. In terms of a before save flow, this assignment element is used to update the existing record that you're using. So again, we're going to go down to our list of variables here. We'll go to record, and that is our opportunity that has triggered this flow. And we're going to grab the parent account field. We're going to equal that value to the record account parent ID. So I'll show you what that looks like here. So we'll go down to the record, and we're going to go again via lookup to the account. We're going to go to the parent account ID. We can either go direct here and grab it here, or we can just grab it from here. It makes it a lot easier there when you look at it, right? And that's it. That's as simple as it gets, right? It's just one simple assignment variable, and you've gone and made your opportunities available. Now, a prerequisite to this, I'm making sure that I enforce the prerequisites, is I've created a custom field on my opportunity object called parent account. It is a lookup field to the account object. I've also added the related object that has been created as a result of that lookup to the account layout. If we're going to see this in action now, as this is active, we're going to go across and we could see this account in particular, right? So we could see this account has a parent account on it. So this should trigger when we create it. Now we're going to go to related. I'm going to create a brand new opportunity for this United Oil and Gas Singapore. The parent account is United Oil and Gas. Now what should happen in this is I'll type in the opportunity name. Let's say United Oil and Gas Singapore sale. We'll set the amount, let's say to 1,000. Set a close date because this is required. And we'll set that to February 3rd, let's say. And set the stage to prospecting. And we'll leave everything else blank. So the parent account, we'll leave that field blank for now. When I click save, it's going to trigger our flow. Now, this has gone ahead and done that for us. We're going to go across now to our United Oil and Gas Corp record, so the parent account record. And you'll see now in the related section, there is your opportunity. And then there is your child accounts opportunity related object. This is the custom one that came as part of that lookup I created in my prerequisites. And you can see now the opportunity I created is now associated, which gives you a holistic view on this account and its subsidiaries, which opportunities you're engaging with. Are they open, in flight? Have they been closed? It gives you that history as well. So what kind of benefit does this flow give, right? If you're in a sales organization and you're a manager of your sales team and you're, let's say, managing the parent account of United Oils and Gas Corp, your sales reps, your other account executives maybe would manage the subsidiary accounts. So that would be the Singapore branch of the business, or let's say the Australia branch of the business, or wherever it is. If they're working on deals, you would want to be able to understand where those deals are at without having to click through to those accounts, right? And opening every single individual account and looking for it. This right here allows you to see it in the one place. I'll just go to the account I'm managing and I'll be able to see it. Now, this concept can be used with any object. It could be child cases rolled up to the account, right? It could be any object rolling up objects to another parent record or another record in itself. This is the first flow that I'm going to walk you through. If you guys have any questions on it so far, please drop them in the chat before we move on. We've got a question here. Wow, this is a great question, actually. Do you think flows are better for simple after update or insert operations instead of Apex triggers? This is I would have a very biased answer, I would say. And that is because I've never touched Apex triggers in my life. I think, whenever there was an action in the past, probably about 3 years ago, even when flows were still fairly new, and it needed a before save or update, then I would always go to my developers, right, and get them to configure it. Now this gives a lot more power to someone like myself who's an admin. So I think this is a great benefit for simple things. If you're going into the more complex thing, again, I've got a very biased opinion towards flows, but I would always pick flows myself. So we've got another question here. Will the flow handle mixed DML? Meaning, can I update a user record from flow when an account or opportunity is updated? Yes, you can. You definitely can. And this is what we'll show in the more complex flows that I'm building out in the following weeks, right? There are some flows where you'll be creating a flow that's triggered off an opportunity. You can then go and update the related product or something via lookup. Let's say user, it can be either direct or indirect relationship, and you can find those and update those accordingly using the update elements. So yeah, great question there. How about Process Builder over Apex triggers? Yeah, so again, I've got a very biased opinion. I would also choose Process Builder. Process Builder is also a great one to have in your tool set as an admin. In terms of auto execution, will flow be efficient than Process Builder? can you expand a bit more on your question in terms of that? The order of execution applies very similarly to flows and process builders. If you're not familiar with that, I think we can get a link sent out when we send out the recording as well that shows you. There's a nice diagram of order of execution when it comes to flows and everything else. But flows give you a lot more, I would say, efficiency, because you can determine where in that execution it occurs. Like I showed before save, after save, on delete. Whereas you're very restricted with process builder. It can either be invoked by another process builder. You can have it on update, creation, or update and creation, right? We've got another question. So we've got a lot of questions flying in here, guys. So we're going to take a couple minutes here for questions before we move on. So is flows bulkified or not to avoid governor limit errors? There is capabilities for flows to be bulkified. You can look into that a bit further, but in terms of governor limit, you're always going to have to factor them in, right, when it comes to it. Cool. All right, I'm going to move on to the second flow that I've built out for this exercise. So can everyone see this flow clearly? I know we had some issues before where people can see it a bit clearly. Can you guys all see this clearly? Sactival, can you see this one clearly? Yes. Perfect. Thank you. All right, I got lots of yeses, which is great. All right, so this one is triggered on the case object. So what we're going to do here, if you're in a service type business, I'll give you the scenario. You've got a case that's come in. Many options where cases can come in. Email to case, from a form, user input. Anyway, lots of room for errors, right, as we can tell. And as you know, with lots of different data sources, you have increased room for errors. Your cases come in. For SLA purposes, you would want that case to be classified correctly. Now, classifications can range from a whole bunch of different fields, but I've used some generic ones for now. In this particular flow, I've got it to be a scheduled triggered flow. The reason being is you don't want this to constantly be evaluating every single case, right? The way this flow would work is it's going to evaluate the cases, all the cases you have, based on a specific condition. So you could set it to be only the open cases, or the new ones, or the ones created last week, and evaluate them when it is triggered. In doing that, you wouldn't want this to be constantly running, right? On insert update, you would want this to be once a day. I've set it for 11 p.m. because that's an off-peak time, let's say for my org. Always suggest running these sorts of scheduled flows for the off-peak times when users aren't really using your time. Now, I know there are instances where there is no such thing as an off-peak time in an org because it's an international company using the one org. So you just find the best time suitable. Sometimes one region may cop it, an outage. Just to answer that question quickly, yes, there is a recording that will be sent out later on. So going into this, when I first created this, again, I'm using the auto layout beta. It's pretty cool in terms of it. You can toggle that on and off if you want to. You don't have to use it. I've gone ahead, select triggered flow. Right, I've set my time. You've got some options around the frequency. So once, daily, weekly, when it starts and what the start time is. So when's the first occurrence of this? Once it's active, and when will it trigger every day after that? So 11 p.m., which is our object. We're going to run flow for all cases, but like I said before, you can do all conditions are met, put an and condition separated. So for example, field 1 would be, let's say, close date equals to, we'll put a specific date time in. Then we'll put another one and it's an and condition. Otherwise, you could change it to all conditions. So they're both ORed, or you can go, this is a pretty newer feature, custom logic. So 1 and 2 or 3, or go into something a bit more advanced. But for now, we'll keep it to run flows for all cases. The question is, does the scheduled flow run as an automated user? So the scheduled flow would run, I believe you could set the user that runs the flow for the scheduled flow. There is an option. Then Sactiville, correct me if I'm wrong here. There's a option to select the user for the scheduled flows. Sakti, you're on mute still.
Yes, I believe I'm not used that scheduled flow, but I believe we got that option.
Cool. So I'll follow up with that one for you guys. But yeah, pretty sure there is. You can set the user that you want, which will give you the right access you need, and everything else. So I'm going to go through this one, and then I'm going to catch up on the questions at the end, if that's all right. So you guys just keep flowing the questions in. After I go through this, we're going to spend some time going through questions because I can see there's quite a lot here. So first part here is a decision. Again, we're using a decision element. I've tried to stick to things that are very simple for this first week, making it a lot easier. This first decision is going to determine our 3 different types of classifications. So we have 3 categories. In my sales org, service org, we have 3 different categories. We have a low, a medium, and a high. For this high one, we're going to use some custom conditioning. Now, what I've first done is I've pulled, again, the record data. So I'll show you here on the first one, record, go across, and we'll go to type, equals. And then the cool thing about this, when you select a pick list in your conditioning, it automatically displays your pick list values for you to choose from. Rather than typing it through, and let's say I make a mistake with my spelling, right? You can actually see that and select it here and just make it easier for you. Right, so I'm going to cancel, go back into it quickly so I know what I preset before. There we go. So case type equals electrical. Then we've also got record case reason equals breakdown, record case type equals mechanical, and record case type equals structural. Now what I've done in this is 1 and 2, or 3 and 2, or 4 and 2. Now what that is essentially doing is we always want to have this case reason on the case records, and we either want it to be a case type of electrical, mechanical, and structural, and that will put us down the path of high. Now you can add as many paths as you want to this. So if I wanted to add a new outcome, I could go ahead and do that as well. The next one, we've got a medium outcome. Medium outcome is just using OR conditioning. This one is going to be where the case reasons are equal to installation, equipment complexity, or performance. Very simple with that one there. And the last one is just the low one. So any records that don't meet the other 2 will go down this outcome here. Now, I know this one's fairly simple. It's only got 3 branches, but I have managed service orgs before where they have quite complex case classification. Rest assured, this is definitely something you can add on to and build out in your flow, building the different permutations of conditions and different outcomes you have. It'll be much easier for you as well to identify your cases moving forward, to report on them, to have correct SLAs, because in the service industry, the goal is time to closure. That's the metrics you're measured on. Moving on, we'll go to the first one here. Over here is our low path. So if it doesn't meet any of these 2 outcomes, we'll go to the low. We've got an update assignment. And what that's going to do is, again, just update the record priority to equal low. And that's it. That's all we're changing here, is the record priority to equal to low. In the medium outcome, again, the assignment element, this one is going to do record priority equals medium. Now, you might want to add, let's say you have a field, and let's say the field is called, we'll go down to our record, and it's called SLA violation, right? We want to make sure that that's violated or not. You can update that, right? Or if you had a field called SLA duration, you could set that as well. So the medium, we'll say the SLA duration for medium is 24 to 48 hours. It was a pick list. We check that. We'll select that value here. You could do that all in this one update. And finally, the high outcome, update to high. Now this one, again, record priority will equal to high. As you can see, this is pretty simple. You can go ahead and add more to it. You can even add more elements to it. If you're not familiar with the beta layout, just so I can show you guys, I forgot to show you guys before, to add all these in, rather than having the elements over here on the left with the traditional flow layout, you can go ahead and just click the plus sign. And it's got all the elements you can add in. So you've got delete records, get records, update records, create records, loop, pause, decision, assignments, subflow, actions, right? Obviously, the different types of flow you use will have different options available. For example, with the previous flow, when I went to add something, and I'll show you it here, you don't have the update records available because you're using a before save flow. This will allow you only to update the record that enters the flow. Won't let you update anything outside of it. Cool. Any questions? I can see we have quite a lot of questions here, so we're going to go through them as best as I can. So do we have option for partial insert update in flows? Not quite sure what you mean by that. If you have a specific example, it would be nice to chuck it in. Sactiville, do you have any insight into that question particularly that you want to add?
Sorry, which one it is?
Do we have option for partial insert update flows?
Especially there is no concept in flows, but somewhere we can achieve using some additional conditions. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. The next question is, do scheduled flows appear under scheduled jobs? Yes. Once you've activated that scheduled flow, it will appear in your scheduled jobs list. Do we follow one flow per object like what we have for triggers and process builder? One record triggered flow, that is. So it all depends on if you map out all your flows that you have. Let's say you've come across an org, you've inherited this org. I've just started as the admin of this, let's say the developer group, Sydney Salesforce org. When I've started there, I can see there are 20 different flows for the opportunity object. What you can do is look at ways to consolidate them. Maybe you're achieving different things based on particular values and everything like that. Maybe you have, out of those 23 of them are scheduled flows. You can consolidate those scheduled flows and break them up with decision paths, right? It all depends on what you want to achieve. And if it the best way to summarize this and put it simple is, does it make sense to combine all those actions into one flow? Right? You could have a flow that updates the opportunity, the account, and cases all in one go because it makes sense based on the opportunity updated. We would then want the account to be updated, and we would then want specific fields on the cases to be updated. But in other instances, you would want a flow, let's say the instance I just did, where it updated the opportunity and filled out that account ID field. You wouldn't want to be updating the account at that stage. There's nothing to update on the account for that record. So that's a great question there. We've got some comments about that's cool having the pick list. There was some feedback on simplifying the conditional logic. Yep, I did think of that when I was reading through that before. So the answer here is, why not simplify the conditional logic to 2 and 1 or 3 or 4? I did put the conditional logic together late one night and didn't really think twice about it. So this is an interesting one. So this can easily be done by a workflow or process builder. I only use a flow because it's faster. So in these use cases, they're very simple. They can be done easily by workflow or process builder. The reason I'm showing them on here is to, one, demonstrate the different capabilities of flows. But the other reason is, if your org is getting used to using flows, then you want to be building everything out in flows. And again, this goes back to looking at, right, if I have a very simple one here for case classification, but I also have another flow that's updating cases at a different point in time, how can we combine them together into one go? Whereas if I created different workflow rules, you wouldn't be able to combine them to be actioned in one go. Would it be possible for me to give you guys a little project for some hands-on practice or trailhead before the next session? Yes, definitely. I'll get some great links to articles. There are some articles. I know there is an active blog called Automation Champion that's great at giving a use case. If you want to have an attempt at it yourself before you go through the steps that are listed on that blog, then don't scroll too far down, because it starts to get into the steps of the actual flow and how to build it out. But there's also some cool trailheads and stuff. I'll send that to Sectorville, and Sectorville, I think you can send a group-wide email out to everyone that was here.
Yes, that's all.
Yeah, and send them with the links and stuff. Can we have a screen flow to display messages at the end of the flow execution just to make it user-friendly? That's an interesting one. In terms of a screen flow, I don't think I've ever come across a use case that would work like that. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that. So let's say if I've done a user, as a user, I've triggered this flow because I've been working, it's updated a record. And you're saying that you would want to make sure that there is a pop-up to say it's been done. I would hesitate in implementing that. And the only reason being is because the whole point of, using the flows and the way I've talked about using them is to make life easier for users. Adding another screen in the way of the user isn't making life easier for them, isn't making them productive, right? If they go ahead, they update the opportunity, they click save, this flow runs in the back end, updating the opportunity for them, and you pop up a screen, they're not able to move on to the next bit, sell more or service more or interact with customers more. But yes, that's a great question. Does scheduled flows will be alternative to scheduled Apex jobs? It depends on the use. Again, a lot of the questions I've answered depends on the use case. It's because it really depends on the use case. There are so many different use cases, edge cases, and everything else involved that could factor into why you would go down Apex jobs, scheduled jobs, why you would go down a scheduled flow. I think if you're using scheduled jobs at the moment and you're coming up to evaluating if you want to transition that to a scheduled flow, have a look at the different limitations, right, of what your scheduled job has at the moment, what you want to expand it to, and compare that to what's available for you to build that in flow. Can we invoke one flow and call another flow based off the decision? You can, depending on the flow that you are using. So it's not triggered on, let's say, the one I was working on before, which is a very simple flow here, and it's a before save flow. But however, on other ones, you can invoke flows from that. And that's when you start to get very powerful flows built out. Can we access Lightning components in Flow? Yes, you can access Lightning components in Flow. I think that's a pretty new thing, if I remember correctly. You've also got Apex actions to call out to Apex codes as well. There are some examples I've seen that a specific Apex has been built. One was for gathering all the values from a multi-select pick list and actioning them one by one. There was a bit of Apex written for that because it wasn't as easy to be done in flows. I've designed screen flow sign up to use in the community. Is it possible to change the look and style of the flow, like color and button label? Yes, there should be options around when you're designing your screen flow. There should be options around the look and feel of it and putting some, I would say, design to it as well. Is there any limitations of number of flows per object like process builder, any article reference if no exact numbers? I can have a look for you and get that as well in the follow-up for you. Are flows similar to process builder where the best practice is one per object? No, actually, I would say the more common thing is to have multiple flows per object. The reason being is, again, it depends on what you're doing. You might have, I'll use opportunity again as an example. You might have two types of opportunities. sales opportunity and a renewal opportunity. You'd want the flows to behave differently in different situations for the two different types. So for a sales opportunity, you would want it to be making sure adding products in, let's say, if it's a particular one, or updating the particular fields, creating a task, for the first call, remind the sales reps to follow up with the opportunity. With the renewal one, you could have a flow that takes all the previous products, right, and creates them as products on this opportunity. So there are two different key aspects you want to be using them for. So therefore, you should be looking at breaking down your flows based on different processes you have in your business. So if one process I have in my business is handling renewals, then I would start to look into, can I make that into one flow, or do I have to make that into two flows, right, for example? What are the use cases for each type of flow? Wow, there's so many use cases for each type of flow. So record triggered flows, you've seen some today for record triggered flows. Screen flows, that's essentially when you want interactions, right? You essentially are building a screen out and you want the user to trigger that and input data into that screen and use that data later on in the flow. Scheduled flow, use case can be practically anything, right? You just don't want it to run all the time. You only want it to run at a scheduled time. Again, that would be more for a large volume of records that you're assessing, right? Like I've done here. There are some other types of flows as well that you can use. I'm not going to go to all of them because I think we've got a lot of questions here and I'm cautious of time, but yeah. Requirement situation, how you trigger also before. All right, cool. So I think I've reached the end of questions. There are 10 minutes left. I wanted to leave the last 10 minutes. I'm going to give it back to Sactiville in a minute. But before I do, does anyone else have any more questions? Please feel free to chuck it in the chat and any feedback as well. And is there any particular flows you want to see in the next 3 weeks? Specifically relating to opportunity management and account management. And then we could probably do that. In which case would a flow be preferred to be used to call from a quick action? Oh, that's a great question. So if the quick action is launching a process, let's say you can even build quick actions to launch a screen flow, right? There is some cool trailheads that launches a quick action. From a quick action, you build a screen flow, and it allows you to fill out a form, and you fill out that form and create a related object for that object you're viewing. I believe the use case for that one was if you've got a record of yourself and you're applying for a new job, you click apply for job. Job was a related object. You fill out the description, and it'll create a related object of job. So there's some common use cases for quick action. Is it possible to launch a subflow from a scheduled flow? That's a great question. I actually haven't explored that one before. So if we're looking here, yes, you can. And you can see right here, launch another flow that's available. So that was an easy one. Feedback. I would like to see how the user password reset flow template works. Yeah, sure. I'll add that in potentially for the week 3. So I'll take that as a note. So that's some great feedback there, guys. So thank you for that. I've just added that a note. So thank you. Example of a screen flow being called from a quick action. Yeah, perfect. That one is definitely I was considering for account management week. So we'll definitely add that in as well for you guys. Suggestion, opportunity management scenarios would be good for each type of flow demonstration. Perfect. Yeah, definitely going to cover that in next week's one. We're talking all things opportunity management and flows next week. So be ready for that one, guys. If you guys have any more questions, if you guys have any other suggestions as well, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and just share my my face here. So feel free to reach out to me. My LinkedIn is my first name, last name, Andrew Fragias. Feel free to add me, drop me a message. My email, I've got my work email is andrew.fragias@validity.com. You can reach out to me at either of those channels. So happy to take questions, feedback, any other suggestions. If you need any help or just want a general chat, feel free to drop a message. And thank you guys so much for being here so far. I'll chuck over to Sackville, and thank you, and be prepared for the rest of February flows.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Andrew. It's a great insight and a lot of informative. Especially you shared a lot of use cases, and I'm sure that you are sharing more use cases for our upcoming session about the Salesforce flow. Thank you guys
Will be.
for joining the session. I hope everyone you liked it. So I'm looking forward for your presence for the upcoming weeks. Please try to join and learn and explore for the Salesforce flow. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks so much, guys.